Our workshop presenter this evening is Jim Emery, also known as the Vocal Jim. Jim is a member of Toastmasters in District 106, which covers Minnesota and Ontario, Canada. He was Toastmaster of the Year in District 106 and has been a featured educational speaker in District 6, 8, 38, 40, 70, 83, and of course, 106. Specializing in all things vocal, Jim Emery brings over 30 years of vocal experience to his speaker and singer coaching. He's not just a speaker, he's a singer also. And I don't know whether we're going to hear any of that tonight, but that would be good, Jim. As a leader in public performance coaching and judging, and an accomplished performer himself, Jim brings a wealth of insights to each of his students. Please welcome Jim as he shares those insights with us tonight. Jim Emery, the Vocal Jim.
Thank you, Mara. Everyone here is most likely a public speaker, and you deliver your message with your voice. So how is your voice working for you? Does it help you or does it hurt you? How do you know? Are people hanging on every word or are they ignoring your world beater ideas? Well, content is certainly important, but only if it's delivered well and understood and motivated. So the agenda for this evening comes in two parts. The first part is focusing strictly on the sound of your voice, and we'll cover 5 key factors to get the best sound out of your voice instrument. Once we have you all sounding like Harrison Ford or Meryl Streep, then we will move on into the 7 key factors for taking that wonderful voice and getting its largest impact out of it. Those are all delivery factors that maximize your impact on your audience. So we're hoping that this lives up to the title, Vocal Delivery on Steroids. Now, a few housekeeping details. Maura covered them, and I'm going to agree with one and disagree with the other. Feel free to put questions into the chat. I'm not a great chat monitor, so she might be monitoring those questions for me. If not, we will have the Q&A program at the end. I would prefer that unless you're bashful for whatever justifiable reasons, I'd love to have you turn your cameras on. I love to watch my audience, as I suspect you do too when you're giving your speeches. Then I can tell, gee, am I really connecting or not? The third housekeeping activity is if you have one of these, not this particular model, but if you have a smartphone, get it out and find the recording app. Almost every smartphone has one. And be prepared to record yourself on your phone, because this is not going to be just me talking for an hour or an hour and a quarter. It's going to be you participating and actually doing some of the things with your own voice. And I think if you can then capture that on your phone, hopefully then you'll be able to go back to them and say, oh yeah, when I tried that, that worked really well, so I need to do some of that. So be prepared to do some recording on your phone. So let's get right to it. Part 1, the voice sound. And what are the 5 key factors to get your voice to sound the best that it can sound? First, how many of you have ever recorded yourself and listened to it before? Yeah, almost everyone, right? Now, those who raised your hand, how many of those the first time you heard it really liked what you heard? And that's pretty typical to almost no one. And the reason for that is because what you've been hearing over the years is the sound of your voice as it works up your eustachian tubes. Those are the little tubes between your mouth cavity and your ears, and a little bit of bone conduction. But very few people actually get the luxury of hearing what other people hear them as. And once you finally get that recording, you do, and now it sounds so different that it's really threatening. And yet everyone else has learned to love that voice. So I hope that you will as well. First factor to getting your voice to sound the very best that it can is a very simple one, sort of. It is breathing. Now, every one of you knows how to breathe, clearly, or you wouldn't have been able to make it to this event. But there are a number of different ways to breathe, and the differences really do make a difference in what your voice sounds like. We'll look at two different ways of breathing this evening. One, if any of you do any exercising, like do any of you run or do aerobics or anything like that? Actually, let me put it even simpler. Have any of you ever done anything that raised your heart rate? I won't ask you what that was, right? For many of us, we call them weekend warriors here a lot. If you're the kind of exerciser where you go out and you run like crazy 1 or 2 days on the weekend and then not at all during the week, so you're only a little bit in shape. Quite often when we get winded, our breathing sounds like this. Anyone ever breathe like that? Probably experienced that. Probably most of you have. Yeah, I'm told that even as an athlete, that's not the most effective breath, but it is one that most of us probably have experienced from time to time. I'm going to call that the pant breath, right? It's the breath that you take when you are panting. So I'd like to actually have you do that on your own, a little panting breath. So you know what that feels like, right? And because you've probably all done that before. Now, we're going to look at a different kind of breath, which I'm going to call the speaker's breath. If I were coaching singers, I would call it the singer's breath. If any of you are singers and have taken voice lessons, you've probably heard it described as a diaphragmatic breath. And I won't get into all of the biology and the physics of where your diaphragm muscle is, because for the most part it really doesn't matter as long as you can just do the breath. So to take one of those speaker's breaths, I'll give you just a fairly easy approach to it. How many of you have ever yawned? Yeah, we've all yawned, right? Hopefully, I'll keep you from yawning, except by the suggestion that I just gave you, which is subliminal this evening. If you think of what a yawn is like at the very beginning of the yawn, it's kind of, right? Now, at the end of the yawn, quite often there's a stretch that goes on in the back of your throat. So if you went all that way, then what that does is it gets the muscles in the back of the throat tight and stretched, and that's not what we want. But if you think of what the feeling is like with the beginning of a yawn, right? Try that with me. Yeah, again. Good, good. Now, what is the experience when you take that breath? For most people, Moira's yawning on her own already. That's why I love to have the cameras on, because I love to plant that yawn subliminal suggestion, and I can see who I got through to. Most of us, when we take the beginning of that yawn, what happens is that our throat relaxes, our mouth relaxes, the throat opens up, the mouth opens up, and a lot of just really nice relaxation begins to happen. So it's all really good for your voice. So what I'd like to have you do now, we're each of us going to experiment. We're going to take a gasp breath, just one, rather than the whole series of pants. But you can do one of those gasp breaths, maybe like somebody really frightened you, right? And then count out loud to 10. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you can record this, please do. But if you can't, or even if you are, kind of get in touch with what your voice sounds like when you do that. All right, so here's the gasp breath, and then count out loud to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Let's do that again and be really aware of what the voice sounds like. One more time, gasp breath, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, good. So you have a sense of what that's like, right? Now, I think I didn't see anyone waving their hand. They were having difficulty with the speaker's breath, that kind of more slow and open beginning of a yawn breath. So this time, let's do that breath and count out loud to 10. Here we go. Good speaker's breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right? So hopefully that had a different feel to it and probably a different sound to it. Let's do it one more time with the open beginning of a yawn speaker's breath. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, good. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you felt that the sound of your voice was different with the gasp breath versus the speaker's breath? Yeah, almost everyone's got their hands up, right? Anyone want to come off mute and say what the difference was? Feel free to just jump in.
I was much more resonant.
Yes, yes, resonant is a wonderful word. You get the first gold star of the evening because we're going to come back. We're going to come back to resonance. Good. Anyone else have an experience or what they heard was different or felt was different? Just jump right in.
My voice felt deeper.
Deeper.
Fuller.
Fuller, yeah. Fuller, maybe a little richer. Yeah, yeah. Did you like that?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, yeah.
I haven't listened to the recording yet.
Oh, you haven't listened to the recording yet, right? Well, by all means do that, right? And I think that you will like what you hear. That good speaker's breath is probably the most important factor to get your voice to sound the way you want it to sound. Most voices with that kind of a breath will sound a lot more full and rich and commanding than the voice with that gasp breath. Now, how many of us, and I won't ask you to raise your hand because it would be embarrassing, how many of us get on a roll giving a speech and we're going so fast and we're making these really good points, so we take that kind of quick little breath and we keep going, and then we take that quick breath again and we keep going, right? What you're doing is that you're gradually, with each of those quick gasp breaths, you're helping your sound decay. You're taking it back to what you just experienced when you did that in the exercise here. So that's factor number one of getting your voice to sound right, is simply getting the right kind of a breath. All right, what is factor number two? Posture. And I'm watching, and about half of you just sat up a lot straighter than you were before. This is also pretty typical, right? Your mother probably told you at one point when you were a kid, stand up straight or sit up straight. Now, she did that because it helped you look better, which is certainly true, but curiously enough, it also helps you sound better. And we're going to have you do, as I look, most of you are seated, and that's fine. So I'd like each of you to try leaning your chair back as far as you can lean it without it falling over and hurting yourself, right? So we're going to lean way, 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 way back. And now try to take that speaker's breath. How did that work? I see at least several of you kind of shaking your heads. It doesn't really work, right? And the reason why is because that leaning back is actually compressing all the muscles and the space in your breathing cavity here so that you really can't get a good breath. And what will be the result if you do that? Well, you'll get the same kind of voice sound that you got with the gasp breath. So how many of you, and again, I won't embarrass you, but how many of you, actually, this one I'll ask you to raise your hand at all. How many of you do communication over the phone? Like maybe you have meetings over the phone, maybe you're in Zoom meetings like this a lot. Like a lot of you, right? Now, how many of you maybe get in the habit of that? Oh, see, I'm going to lean my chair back here, or kind of bend over looking at my phone, right? Your posture probably isn't what it should be. Well, what happens is that in that context, then the sound of your voice is not going to be as good. Why? Because when your posture's out of alignment, you can't get the good breath that creates that wonderful tone that we just did in factor 1. If you're standing, the same thing is true, right? A slouch really, it gets in the way of good breathing. Curiously enough, the I'm going to stand proud does the same thing. It actually pinches off the airspace in the back here. I don't know if you can see my other hand, right, which is around the lungs as well. So stand tall, stand relaxed, and I think that you'll find that that posture will help you a lot in your breathing. Factor number 3, which comes directly from factors number 1 and 2, and that's tension or relaxation. All right, so first we're going to do 2 things. We're going to get on our best sit up straight and be relaxed kind of posture. And we're going to take that good speaker's breath that we did just a minute ago, and we're going to count out loud again from this time only from 1 to 5. So without any other guidance, just take a good speaker's breath and count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, pretty easy. You can all do that. Now this time, I'd like you to tense one of your fists, right? As tense as you can make it, and do the same thing. So we're going to take the breath first, good, nice, relaxed breath, and then tense a fist and count out loud to 5. So here's the breath. Tense, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? So just so you get the feeling of that again, we're going to do that one more time. So we take a nice relaxed breath, good posture, tense your fist and count to 5. Breathe. Tense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? How did that work? Anyone want to volunteer what their experience was?
It almost felt like my teeth were clenched.
Yeah.
They weren't, but it was slightly.
Because they were. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have experience of tension in some other part of their body? Yeah. Yeah. Curiously, with a lot of people, if some part of your body is tense, then a lot of times it goes right to where your voice is, or right to where your breathing mechanism is. But either way, tension radiates through your entire body. I'll have people do this exercise, and instead of their fist, I'll have them tense their left ankle. It has the same impact because if one part of your body is tense, then another part often is as well. And usually that gets you, as I say, into the breathing or into the vocal cords area, which is going to make that voice sound tense, right? So if I tense my fist here, my voice starts to get tense, and you can hear what a tense voice sounds like, right? It's really hard to have this more open and resonant kind of voice with tension anywhere in my body. So let's do the following. You can do this seated, or you can stand if you like. It kind of depends on what the most common way you deliver speeches are. If it's standing, then why don't you stand for the next little exercise. If it's seated, then you can stay seated, but it's going to be the same exercise. What I want you to do is we'll simply take that nice speaker's breath, right? So we get a nice full breath, and then we're going to hold our breath, right? or you're not going to let it out again. And while you're holding your breath, I want you to do a body inventory. And what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to start by focusing on mentally on your toes and ask yourself, so are my toes relaxed or are they tense? And then move to the arches of your feet and maybe your heels, and then up into your ankles and up your shins and your knees and into your thighs and your hips and all around your torso into the rib cage. So you're going to go all the way from body to top of your body, or from bottom to top, including the arms and the hands and the fingers. And you're going to just ask yourself, again, while you're holding your breath, so is this particular part of my body tense? The reason we're doing this is we're looking for what your body's unique tension spots are, and they're different for everyone. Okay, so I'm going to take about 30 seconds. If you get halfway through and you simply are completely exhausted and have to take another breath, take another quick breath and then hold it again and finish the inventory. But make sure that you ask yourself where in your body gets tense and kind of keep track of that, because we'll have some of you volunteer that. So, all right, so here's the good breath. Hold your breath and do the inventory. Toes, let's see, arches, heels, ankles, calves, shins, knees, thighs, yeah, oh, hips, yeah, my belly, ooh, small of my back, up into my rib cage, yeah, my shoulders, yeah, oh, and my upper arm, and my elbows, and my lower arm, and my wrists, and my fingers. Same thing on the other hand. Okay, and we'll come back here, up into the neck. How about the front of the neck? How about the back of the neck? The jaw, the cheekbones, the ears, brow, the scalp, maybe the back of my neck. Yeah. When you're done, just raise your hand so I have a good handle on kind of when most everyone finished the inventory. Okay, so I think most of you have done it. So now, again, would anyone like to volunteer what their particular tension spots were?
Jim, this is... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll jump in. Jim, this is Carolyn. My whole midsection tensed up from about the thighs to just below my ribs.
Okay, all right. And was the feeling on the front of your body or the back or both?
More of the front.
Front side. So all around the hip area and the surrounding tissue up and below that. All right, good. Anyone else? I think either Joe or Sheila had their hands up.
This is Sheila, Jim. Nice to have you here. For me, it was the top but the back of the shoulders, which is odd. Like, yeah, here. Back of the shoulders. Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Who else? I thought I saw another hand. Rebecca.
Yeah. So mine was a mixture. It was my thighs, but also my bum. I tensed both legs and my bum, but also my back, the back of my neck, and then these muscles coming down here as well.
All right. Yeah. Some of us forget how many muscles there are in the glutes. You know, what you call your bums. There's a lot of muscles there, and they can get tense just as well as any other ones do. And then in the neck and down the sides. That's good. Anyone else? All right, I'll share what mine are. Mine are my calves, and being a singer and standing on choral risers, that can be a real troublesome thing, right? Because they get a lot of use. And the other is maybe like Rebecca's, it's sort of up the top here of the back of my neck, right where the spine enters my skull. But the curious thing is, we heard several of you volunteer, and you all had different spots, right? So the reason I had you do the inventory rather than just tell you, oh, make sure this is relaxed, is because you probably have unique spots that get tense that maybe your friend doesn't. It may be for medical reasons. It may be just a lifetime of sitting or standing in a particular way. It may be any number of causes. But now that you know those spots, what are you going to do about them? Well, the easiest thing to get rid of tension, which I've learned over the years, is motion. Right? So if if my calves, for example, and my calves are just going to be off camera, I can't get that far back. If my calves get tense, the easiest way to get them untense is to move them. All right, and as a speaker, that's pretty easy. I can just shift weight, right, and go from one foot to the other, and a little bit of weight shift is fine. It's pretty normal to see a speaker who might move side to side just a little bit, as long as it doesn't look like a nervous habit, right? For the back of and top of my neck, again, motion is all I need to do. So I can, especially if I'm in front of an audience that spans a fair amount of arc, I can look to this side, I can look to that side, and instantly that tension back here went away. So find ways, and they don't have to be large motions. Let's say your wrists get tense, just a little bit of rotation of one or the other will take the tension out of those. So one of the things you might do is, in your next speech, is take those tension spots that we just identified in your body inventory and practice just a little subtle motion. As I said, it doesn't have to be big. It can be as simple as one of those even, but anything that just moves that tension spot, and the tension will tend to vanish. With the tension gone, now taking the speaker's breath and being relaxed otherwise is that much easier. So that's factor number 3, tension and relaxation. Factor number 4, which gets back to, I think it was Bob mentioned it, is resonance. Now, what does resonance mean? Well, let's talk about, any of you play a brass instrument or have played over the years, a trumpet or a trombone or a tuba, or so if you raised your hand, did you ever play with just the mouthpiece, not with the mouthpiece inserted into the horn? Rebecca, I think you raised your hand. Did you ever play just in the mouthpiece?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it was a long time ago. A long time ago when I was.
So, what did it sound? What did it sound like?
It sounds more echoey, I guess, like you're in as you would expect in I guess, a wide open room.
Yeah. See, I was a cornet player. Cornet's like a trumpet, and so I did this as well. And what it sounds like is this, right?
Yeah.
Because all that's happening is your lips are buzzing.
Not going into anything.
It's not a very pretty sound. It doesn't sound like a trumpet or a trombone. It just sounds like your lips are buzzing, and no one would ever pay money to come and hear a lip concerto. Right? Now, what makes that brass instrument sound like the brass instrument that we all know and love? It's that you put the mouthpiece into this long set of tubing. It's conical or cylindrical tubing that goes all the way from here around several times and then comes out into this wonderfully flared bell at the end. All of that airspace between your lips and coming out the bell is a resonance chamber. And what that does is it takes the sound of your lips and it allows them to reverberate, and it gives them character. So by the time it comes out the other way, it sounds wonderful instead of awful like your lip buzz would. Now, the curious thing is your voice works the same way. you have these little tiny membranes down in the middle of your throat here that, unless you've been really abusive to them, for the most part you don't feel. They're just there and they vibrate when you run air by them. And you run air by those vocal cords or vocal folds the same way you would run air past your lips if you were a brass player. And they vibrate and they make a sound that's almost like the lip buzz. If you put a microphone all the way down to right above the vocal folds and then made some spoke or sang, it's going to be just as ugly and not very pleasant to listen to as the lip buzz was here. So what changes that sound from when the vibrating sound leaves here until it gets out to the ears of your audience? Well, you have a resonance chamber. It's your throat and it's your mouth. All right, so if the throat is open, it's cylindrical and it's, however long it is. Yours is going to be a different length than mine, but it has a certain length and it has a certain regularity to it. And the sound waves come out of here and kind of bounce around and get enhanced here. And the same thing in the mouth, as the sound kind of comes up and bounces off the roof of your mouth and then comes out here, your bell, which is your lips and your teeth here. So it's very much like a brass instrument, and magically it transforms from this kind of sound into a wonderful voice. So what's the best way to get resonance out of your voice, other than the breathing that we just talked about, is to get the throat as open and relaxed as it can, because a larger space is going to be more resonant. And the same thing with your mouth. What's the best way to get your throat and your mouth open and relaxed? Bingo, number one, the singer's breath and the speaker's breath. So take that breath again and feel what happens in the throat and the mouth. Right? It opens up and it just allows the resonance to come along. So that's probably the biggest enhancement of resonance that you can do. Now, let's look at one other thing that affects the character or the resonance of your voice. This time you're going to do it with me. We're going to count to 5 again. A good breath, good posture. And what we're going to do at this time, 2 different ways. The first time is we'll take the breath and we'll count to 5 with a frowny face. All right, so the cheeks muscles are kind of going to be down, and it's going to look as if you just got scolded by your mother. Well, let's do that. So we take a good breath, frown, and count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, do that again and kind of get in touch with, you could record this if you want, and kind of get in touch with what the voice sounds like. Again, breathe, frown, and count. Frown, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to lift these muscles in a smile. So it will be breathe, smile, 1, 2, all right, so here we go. Breathe, smile, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Again, get in touch with what that sounds like. Do it again. Breathe, smile, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Was the sound of your voice different in frowny versus smiley face? Yeah, almost everyone's giving me thumbs up or nodding their heads, right? So which one do you think your audience would like more? Yeah. Chances are pretty good it's going to be that smiley face, right? Now, I could give you the spectrogram that shows you what happens. You're getting higher harmonics in the frequency spectrum of your voice, but all of that's just geeky stuff. For the most part, it's just the voice you want people to hear. Now, if you're talking on the phone, do you think people can tell? Yeah, they can. They don't have to see you to know if you're smiling or not. So a smile can be a huge asset to get that, to enhance that already rich tone that you're producing by the other factors that we've looked at. Right? Get in the habit of using a smile. Even on a tough topic, you can actually, a serious topic, you can actually lift these muscles anyway and not look silly. Like I'm lifting my cheek muscles now, but I have a furrowed brow, and I'm still getting those upper harmonics out of my voice that I would if I were just in a complete smile, right? So get in the habit of doing that. So that's resonance, open throat, open mouth, smile, and you're 2/3 of the way home. The last of the 5 factors is pitch. Now, curiously, we're going to talk about pitch later as well. The best pitch for your voice, what do you think it is? Has anyone ever suggested to you, in fact, I think Sandra was just my test case, that that a low voice is better? Yeah? Anyone ever see that? If you go online and you Google voice coaches for speakers, there are all kinds of voice coaches out there who will tell you that they can help you find that lower, more commanding voice. So is it better? Is it more commanding? Is it the nirvana? Well, if so, then there must be hundreds of research papers that have on studies that have been done to actually prove that out, right? I mean, there's all kinds of people in the world that do research on all kinds of things. There must be peer-reviewed research papers that say, yeah, the low voice really works. I have been looking for 20 years, and I have yet to find one. Not credible academic peer-reviewed paper, not one. So I did my own research. I went off, YouTube's a great thing to do research on. I went off and I looked at the professional speaker world. Name your professional speaker and say, is that a low voice or a high voice? The curious thing is they're all over the map. The one counterexample, for example, any of you ever hear a speaker, his name's Zig Ziglar? Maybe you've run across Zig, right? Go online and listen to your voice. Zig has one of the highest voices I ever heard. And he's making millions of dollars using that voice to deliver his message, right? So we all, especially the men for whatever reason, lust after James Earl Jones's deep voice. And yet James Earl Jones was born with that voice. That's what his vocal cords and his resonance chambers looked like, and you probably weren't. Some of you may have a wonderful deep voice, and that's great. Use it to your advantage. But what works better than a deep voice is a natural voice, right? Now, I also I looked at politicians. Some of you are from the United States, many of you are not, but I went back from 1952 and checked recordings of the presidential election candidates in every United States president election, which happens every 4 years. So however many years that is, it's probably 18 or 20 elections. I listened to recordings and I said, so who won? The higher voice or the lower voice candidate? Interestingly, it's just about even. Right? Sometimes the high voice wins, sometimes the low voice wins. Actually, Barack Obama, who won twice, was the higher of the two voices once and the lower of the two voices once, and he won both times. So the low voice really didn't make all that much difference. I even went to the World Championship of Public Speaking and looked at some of the past winners and said, so is it always the deeper voice that always seems to win? It really isn't, right? But if it sounds natural, it will be. So I'm going to give you an exercise that you can take home with you. This is how to find your optimum pitch range that you should spend most of your time, not all of it, most of your time in. If any of you have listened to a friend tell a story and you really want that friend to continue talking and you want to give them positive reinforcement, but you don't want to jump in and talk because you don't want to interrupt the flow, many of us do the following. Anyone ever go, I think that's a global pattern, but it certainly is a North American pattern. The if you do I have just bounded the optimum pitch range for my voice. The of right about there. If I were to sing it, it would be about there, right? But right about there is the kind of the bottom end of my optimum range, and right about there is about the high end of my optimum pitch range. So if I talk between and most of the time, my voice is going to be the most relaxed and the most resonant that it can be. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't talk down here sometimes, right? But I use it for effect, not as my default. And I can talk up here sometimes, but I use it for effect, not as my default. So find your and use that as where you talk most of the time. And I'll warn you that if it's not where you are now, it's going to be difficult to change because our identities are so wrapped up in our voices. But in the end, you're going to love the result. All right, so those are the 5 factors to get your voice to sound the best that it can sound. Breathing, so you've got the speaker's breath, posture, tension and relaxation, and you know your tension spots and movement, resonance we talked about with the breath and with the smile, and pitch in your range. So if you take those, now, you all do sound like Harrison Ford or Meryl Streep. So what are we going to do with the voice? We're going to move on to the next 7 factors of vocal delivery. So you can take a deep breath because we're going to kind of shift a little bit. But we're only going to shift a little bit initially because the first of the 7 factors for vocal delivery is also pitch. Oh, yeah. So now we're talking in the range, and that works really well. But does that mean you want to be a monotone? No, of course not, right? And all of you who are in Toastmasters know already that nobody says today's seminar covers 3 topics, and the topics are how to start a speech and how to finish a speech and what comes in the middle. I mean, everybody knows not to do that, right? So, but is changing pitch by itself all you need to do? Well, let me give you a different example. Today's seminar covers 3 main speech topics. I'm fumbling on the words here. And the first is how to start a speech, and then how to finish a speech, and all the stuff in the middle. I'm sure most of you have heard that kind of a vocal delivery. Often where I see it is with teenagers at the mall. Right? That every sentence ends as if it were a question. Well, we just changed the pitch a lot. Did that fix the problem? No, it really didn't. All it did was it introduced another boring pattern. So just changing pitch for the sake of changing pitch isn't the answer here to don't be a monotone. Let's think about changing pitch to have a goal in mind. Now, what might be a reason you might want to speak higher than normal? Well, one approach is to use it for excitement. Let's say you're the club president for your club, and you just got a message from TI International, and you want to share it with your club. And the message is this: I just got a message from TI International, and we got Smedley distinguished. Right? See what I did with my voice? I raised it about 5 notes on the piano to deliver that Smedley distinguished. That had a lot more impact, a lot more excitement than if I had just said, and we got Smedley distinguished. Okay? Good. That's wonderful. Oh no, we got Smedley distinguished. Then that adds some excitement that you just wouldn't get otherwise. So high for excitement can be really effective. Why might you want to speak lower than normal? Well, let's say that you got a different message from TI International that you had to deliver to your club. And the message is, I just got some news from TI International, and this club is no longer in good standing. Right? It was kind of a downer message. But the lower pitch, the downer pitch, actually helped deliver the downer message with impact. If I had just said, and this club is no longer in good standing, it doesn't have the impact that no longer in good standing does, right? So you can use a lower pitch to bring a certain impact you wouldn't get otherwise. So that's a couple of reasons to go high and low, but the most important reason to change pitch is to clarify or accentuate meaning. So I'm going to give you a 3-word sentence. I am excited. If I just said, I am excited, okay, good for you. But if I change the pitch of one or more of those words, I can make the meaning of that sentence take on all kinds of different meanings. So the first one, let's say, is I'll say, I am excited, which kind of implies, well, I don't know about you or the rest of you, but look, I am excited. So I raised the pitch on I, and it brought a whole new emphasis to them and maybe clarification to my message. On the other hand, if raising the pitch on I is all that's required, what if I leave the pitch there and I said, I am excited? All of a sudden, I made a question out of it, and I completely reversed the meaning of the sentence, right? Now, clearly, I'm not excited, and I'm just amazed that you think that I am. So pitch change on that I word changed the meaning of the sentence. Same thing with am. With am, I am excited, right? I don't care what, let me pick some victim here. I don't care what Zizi said. Whatever she said is wrong. I am excited. All right. So it brings an emphasis. But you can also make the question again. I am excited, which is the same as fixing the pitch on the first word. And then my favorite one, if any of you know the, I think it's A.E. Milne stories, the Winnie the Pooh stories, right? You may know the donkey character's name Eeyore. Eeyore might say it this way, I am excited, right? Because Eeyore's never excited. And it doesn't matter what the words were. When he said, I am excited, clearly the dropping the pitch on excited made that not exciting at all. So use pitch variations strategically to help with your meaning and to bring emphasis to your meaning. Factor number 2, we're making good time, volume. How loud should you speak? Well, if you're speaking in person, you should speak loud enough to be heard in the back of the room. Because if people in the back can't hear, they'll either leave or they'll just look at their email on their phone. But you don't want to be so loud that the poor schmuck in front of you is having their ears assaulted, right? So know the room and know how loud you have to be for the room. If you're in a very big room, use amplification, get mic'd. It'll benefit the audience immensely, and it'll be much easier on your own voice at all as well. Now, if you're online, how do you know? Well, you get here early and you do a sound check, right? And you ask someone, hopefully the Zoom master, is this too loud? Or is this too soft? And they come back and they say, no, I could hear the soft and the loud didn't clip. It was okay. Then you know that you're probably all right. But do a sound check so that you know you're there. Now, you do want to do variations of volume even within that space. If any of you were Pathways ambassadors, you had to go out and sell Pathways to the clubs. If you were the leader of the Pathways ambassadors, you might have done a sort of a pep talk to the other ambassadors. It might have gone something like this. We have the people, we have the tools, we have the desire, and we're going to do this. Right? See how a gradual crescendo of volume brings a power to that message that if I had just said, we have the people, we have the tools, we have the desire, and we're going to do this, it just doesn't have the same power of the delivery. So you can certainly use louder for power. What about softer? Can you imagine using softer for interest? Well, maybe a presentation to that same group, maybe not, but it might go something like this. You all know that we're well prepared, but we also have a secret weapon, right? And you have the sense of, oh, everyone's now on the front edge of their seat. Tell us about the secret weapon, right? So often you can use soft to grab someone's attention even more effectively than loud. So you can use that, again, strategically. Do you want to use that often? No. If you're doing this all the time, then people will just think you're wacko and they'll look at their program to see who's the next speaker, right? But you can use soft for grabbing interest, and it can be very effective. Factor number 3, diction. That is, how do we pronounce our words? Generally, most of us have a decent level of diction in our normal conversational style. If someone's told you that you're a mumbler or have often say, what did you say? I didn't understand that, then maybe you need to look at your diction a little more strongly. But most of us probably are good that way. But there are some situations where you want to be a little bit more explicit or clear or crisp with your diction. I'll give you one kind of absurd case. Let's say you're training the bomb squad about a new bomb that's been spotted and how to disarm the bomb. And you get to the point where you say, and this is really critical, right here at this point, you need to flip down all 3 switches simultaneously. Right? See what I did with the diction there? The fact that it got crisper and cleaner meant this is something you better pay attention to and you better get it. So if you have a point in your speech, and it won't be about disarming bombs, but if you have something where the detail or the message is absolutely critical, a little crisping up of diction can really help. Now, I also discovered on my own a number of years ago, although I won't claim to be the only person who has, that the softer you speak, the more you want to crisp up your diction. So that message about having a secret weapon is the diction has to be clear there, or just the fact that it's soft means it won't be as understandable. So more deliberate diction for soft. Now, it can also know your crowd, know your audience. It may also need to be more deliberate for non-native English audiences, or if you are a non-native English speaker. So hopefully my diction has been okay so far, because many of you are not North Americans and have had to listen to my North American accent now for over an hour. And that can be really important. So know your audience. If you know a fair number of your audience are not native English speakers, then crisp up your diction, and they'll enjoy you that much more. That's factor number 3. Number 4, how fast should you talk? Here's a statement. Let's say your board of directors you just met with them and you have a message for your club or your company. We just heard back from the board of directors. They heard our new project proposal and they liked it. It's approved. We're really going to do this. Right? See how adding speed to the delivery again brings excitement, much in the same way that adding higher pitch does as well. So you can do a faster delivery to bring excitement to a spot that's really intensely exciting, and you want your audience to experience that. Now, you might look at, well, slower maybe works too. Let's say that you were bringing a message to your club that wasn't really very pleasant, and you said, I have some really bad news today. Our club founder passed away. Right? If I had just said our club founder passed away, it doesn't have the same impact that you want it to have. So slower can really bring a deliberate point in a more strong way. Slower often for non-native speakers, again, just so that they can keep up with you. And in general, vary your speed for interest as it works for you. That's number 4. Number 5, the ultimate change of delivery speed is pauses, right? But they're a class all their own. If I said, gee, we've covered a lot of material this evening and you've all been very attentive, but which point is the most important to remember? I need a pause there to set. Now you're all on the front edge of your seats because you want to know which one was most important that you ought to work on. So setting up a big point with a pause can be really effective. You can also use it to let something sink in. I have a coaching client that I worked with who works for the Federal Reserve Bank, and he goes around and gives speeches. And one of his speeches is about the intelligence revolution, which is the impact on people's employment of automation. And he, at one point in the speech, has a statement that he says, in a recent McKinsey study, they determined that over 50% of everything we pay human beings to do can be automated with today's technology. And then he would pause to let that sink in. I mean, that's a mammoth statement. You know, that's kind of a slap you right in the face statement. And you want to let that sink in, so you need the pause. Now, in his case, he'd come right back and he'd repeat it, 50% today's technology. And he'd pause again and let that sink in. So you can use pauses to let things sink in. Now, there's lots of other uses of pauses as well. In fact, I think I came to an EAT seminar that was done by another voice guy, and he had a whole list of 5 or 7 different uses of pauses. They're really effective. All right, factor number 6. We're coming down the home stretch. Vowels and consonants. This is part of diction. A friend of mine taught me years ago, he put it this way: beauty is in the vowels and passion is in the consonants. If I were to say, what a wonderful sunset, that sounds beautiful. On the other hand, if I said, what a wonderful sunset, you probably think that I was on something. I don't know. It clearly doesn't come across beautifully, right? So softening out the consonants is a way to bring beauty or calmness or gentleness to your message in a way that crisper consonants don't work quite as well. On the other hand, if you want passion, that's where consonants are really effective. I've got an example, and I'll apologize to all of the UK members. This comes from the American Revolutionary War, and there was an American patriot named Patrick Henry who gave a famous speech to rouse the colonists to take up arms against the British, and it ended with maybe the most famous political statement of all time in American history: "Give me liberty or give me death." Now, if he had just said, "Give me liberty or give me death," that he could have shown his passion, but there's a better way to do it, and we'll use consonants to do that. I'll give you an example. If you want to follow along and do it with me, that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to take 3 of the 4 words, give again, and the final death, and we're going to take the initial hard consonant and we're going to accentuate it. So instead of saying give, we're going to say give. Hear the difference in the G on the beginning of that word, give. So it's going to be give me liberty or give me death. Both of those G's are going to be really powerful. We're also going to take the last word, which is death, also has a hard consonant, a hard D on the front of it. So it's going to sound, rather than death, it's going to be death, death, right? And if we were all in person, I'd get you all starting to chant death, death, death. And then I have a joke about they've called security to come down and get the terrorists, but we're not there. So you'll just have to imagine what that would have been like. Now, curiously, liberty is a different one. If I said liberty, that doesn't really work. And why is because there's a whole set of consonants that I call the singable consonants. That is that they're consonants you could sing a song on. L happens to be one of them. I could sing happy birthday. Oh. You could do it on M, on N, right? There's a whole set of them. Let me see there. L, M, N, R, V, and Z. Any of those consonants, rather than making them harder like the hard consonants, you make them longer. See what I did with the L of the word longer? So you get more emphasis out of the word liberty by saying liberty than you would by saying liberty. That doesn't work. So taking the whole phrase now, it goes, give me liberty or give me death, right? And you can try that. And curiously, it doesn't matter how loud you do it, it still has passion. So if you want passion in a particular part of your speech, use those initial consonants and they'll work every time. Final factor is an easy one, sort of. It's energy. Audiences are perfect mirrors. If you give them energy, they'll give it back to you. If you don't, then they won't either. And what you want is, after your speech is done, you want everybody really excited about that speech and talking about it in the hall afterwards. So if you give them that energy, they'll carry that energy with them for the rest of the day. If you don't, you won't. So just take that one to the bank. If you want to err on the side of too much energy, not too little. So that's the 7 factors: pitch, volume, diction, delivery speed, pauses, vowels and consonants, and energy. There you go. You have everything you need to be the next Oprah. One last thing. How can you tell if you're doing it? Well, we're going to go back to this again, right? Take that smartphone and record yourself. You do practice your speeches, right? Yeah. When you're practicing, hit the record button, give your speech just like you would to any audience, and then go back and listen. Be your own best coach. Right? Don't be too hard on yourself. That can be easy to do, but listen as you think an audience would. If there's some spot that doesn't work very well, go back and look at one of the 5 factors about how your voice sounds like, or one of the 7 factors of how to do delivery, and experiment, and then hit record, do it again. Do that until you get to the point where you really like the answer. For harder problems or more detailed analysis, well, shoot, get a coach. I'll put my contact info in the chat. But seriously, being your own coach, I think, is certainly the best start. So we're at the end of my prepared material. Let's open the floor up now for Q&A. I want to make sure there's still a little time for that. Maura, was there anyone in the chat that
yes,
I should address?
I have a question from Sandra Savage from Idaho. What techniques does Jim have for a wide range of voices? And then in brackets, she's put emotions, dialects, ages, genders, etc.
That's about 12 questions, I think. First, most of what I've given you today should work across the board, but that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions. If you want to talk about emotions, yeah, that's a whole nother workshop that I'm putting together that is, I'm going to call What Does Hope Sound Like? Because hope or love or joy or excitement or sadness or anger all do have a different sound to them. And I'd love to give you a really quick answer there, but I think that's a little more complicated question than you might guess. Dialects are kind of another thing altogether. If English is not your native language, then there are lots of coaches who work with people to do dialect correction. And there it may be a question, again, of knowing your audience. I've been hopeful that all you Brits have been able to tolerate my American accent through this presentation, but I've tried not to get into Southern drawl or any of the mountain kind of dialects, because that would be pretty tough. But I don't have an easy answer for that, other than probably find a pro who knows how to do that. Genders, certainly I would be naive if I didn't say that there is gender bias in the world. And some of my statements about a low voice not necessarily being your best answer, again, gets down to know your audience. If you're in an environment with, I'll put it bluntly, male chauvinist pigs who don't want to listen to a female's voice, you may have to make some adjustments. Even there, I would suggest that you don't live in the lower voice because it'll really wreck your voice. Find ways to use a lower voice when it will have biggest impact, and maybe that's on your biggest point, right? That you really want to make a close on something that you're presenting, and then allow your voice to kind of go back to your better range altogether. So I don't know if that answered maybe about half of what that question was. Any others?
I noticed that Daria has had her hand up. Daria, do you want to ask a question?
I wanted to about the lower voice. My friend is an actress, and she said that before a play at home, she was talking in low voice, so that she is like trained, and so that during the play, she can, when she speaks louder, she is not speaking in higher pitch voice. So
well, again,
talking in lower voice helped her.
Yeah, some of it depends again about around the context. If she's in theater, there are all different kinds of pitches for different kinds of characters. If you tend to be the villain in a production, villains often have low voices, right? So that may just be something that you have to accommodate. Although
no, that's not what I mean. That when usually people speak with normal range voice, when they speak louder, they sometimes speak with higher pitch when they speak louder. So she trained with lower voice, so she speaks with normal pitch when she speaks louder on stage.
Yeah,
and
I hear you.
It's like maybe when pianists,
I guess I would actually have to. I would actually have to hear her voice and see what's going on. I mean, I do understand that sometimes when you get excited, that your voice can tend to go higher. Some of knowing how to remedy that is just practice and coaching. But I wouldn't recommend that that her answer is to go to the lowest voice she can use all the time, because I think that won't be very good for her voice, and it will end up coming across actually as not as genuine as her optimum, that pitch range would. Certainly speaking higher than that range would be less effective and equally not as good for her voice. So a good question. Sheila.
Do you recommend anything to eat or drink or not eat or drink before a performance, whether you're singing or a 20-minute keynote speech, for example, that helps your voice, or something that might harm your voice?
Yeah, there's a long answer and a short answer. The long answer is another 20-minute seminar that I do. The short answer is drink lots of water. Fluid is very important to the voice. The biology of it, those little tiny membranes down here in your throat, the way they create vibrating air, which is sound waves, is the air goes by them and they oscillate, right? So they touch and then they don't touch, and they touch and then they don't touch. So the more flexible they are, the more predictable of a sound that they will produce, right? If you're dehydrated, then what happens is that they dry out. And if they're dry, they kind of rasp against each other, and you don't get as good a tone as you would otherwise. So fluids are really good. Now, does that mean that before you hit stage or give your speech, you're going to down a quart of whatever? Actually, no. Where the lubrication for your vocal folds comes from is moisture in your bloodstream. So it's actually important that the fluids find their way through your digestive system and into your bloodstream in order for this to be adequately lubricated. And I often recommend, if you can, like start 4 hours before you're going to perform, and get your fluid levels up, because it will really help a lot. Other than that, don't shout a lot. Don't go to your favorite team's ball game, and scream at the top of your lungs, because that's just not good. And curiously enough, talking in your range. actually is going to be better for your voice as well. So as far as foods, know your own body there. You can tell. Some people say don't drink milk products. I do, and I eat ice cream, and it doesn't affect my voice at all, but other people it does. So there, it's a kind of a question of just monitoring your own voice and saying, oh, you know, excuse me, what I had for dinner tonight was hot and spicy, and my voice wasn't really in good shape. Okay, so you just write that on your list that now that's something that you know that you know to avoid. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Helps a lot.
Zizi, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, thank you, Jim. And my question is, naturally, I was told I have a soft, slow, polite voice, so it can be a weakness when it comes to delivering speech in a leadership environment. So any tips how to improve that?
Well, two different tips depending on the context. If you're in a large environment and you can get amplification, do that. You know, get a microphone, and don't be embarrassed to do that. Some of the best speakers in the world use microphones all the time. And what that will do is it will mean that you don't have to force your voice to be loud. The amplification will do that for you, and I think that you'll like that a lot. In a Zoom environment, go into the Zoom audio settings and crank up the gain on your microphone, right? If you don't know how to do that, send me an email, jim@vocaljim.com, and I'd be glad to tell you how to do that. But it's down in the audio settings of Zoom. And then again, you'll be able to talk with what feels more natural to you, but it still will be loud enough for us. On the other hand, if you can't be amplified, but you just need to be louder, maybe you're at work, you know, and you're in a big conference room or something, and you need to carry to the back of the room. There, I would say for the most part, watch your breathing and watch all those other things that contribute to resonance, right? That we talked about. And I think that you might experiment, but that speaker's breath, if I take that, I can really carry quite a bit louder than if I don't. If I take that, it's really hard and I have to push really hard and I get tense here to get loud. So generally the more relaxed your voice is, I think the more resonant it will be. And keep the smile there as well, because that smile actually carries.
Thank you. Thank you
All right.
very much.
Yeah, other questions?
Jim, we have a question from April Soon from Vancouver in the chat.
Okay.
April says, I have a lung condition that causes me to cough a lot for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
I've noticed that my previously relaxed, clear voice is now labored, rough, taking effort to speak for so long that I get fatigued quickly and I catch myself with vocal fry. Is it possible to permanently damage vocal cords by chronic coughing, and is there any way to prevent damage?
Let me first put in a disclaimer that I'm not an ENT. I'm not a doctor. And I mean, the first thing to do is to with a medical pro and listen very carefully to that individual, because they will know your voice better than I do. A lot of ENTs will do what we call in the singing business, what we call scoping. And that is what they will do is they will take, it's like a little fiber optic cable, and they'll actually thread it down your throat and look at your vocal cords. It becomes sort of a little camera that they can see what your vocal cords look like, both when they're at rest and when you're using them, and they'll be able to tell you if you've done any permanent damage. And there is, I mean, there's a thing called nodes, which is a fancy word in the medical community for calluses that develop on your vocal cords. And if you could imagine that your vocal cords are these little membranes that vibrate, if they got calluses on them, they're not going to vibrate as evenly and nicely. So there are some some things that can happen, yeah. But again, I would say to check with an ENT to be sure of that. Otherwise, I would just say again, lots of fluids, never hurts, because you'll get the lubrication of those vocal folds on a regular basis. And avoid anything that you could that would abuse them. By all means, and I doubt that you are at this stage, but if you're a smoker, just quit. And I know that's really, really hard, but that's one of the worst things for a voice that you can do. I would probably keep the alcohol level down of what you drink. If you think about when you get a shot or a jab, as they call them in Europe, often the doctor will rub alcohol on your arm before you get the shot. And if you remember what that feels like, the skin goes instantly dry because alcohol evaporates so rapidly. Well, that's what happens when alcohol comes through your bloodstream and hits your vocal cords too. So alcohol in general is probably not a good thing for a voice. Those are a few things. Someday maybe I'll come back and give my 20-minute seminar on this. Any others?
I don't see any others, Jim.
Okay.
Anyone else? No.
Well, I've enjoyed this. In closing, I'll just re-emphasize that your voice is your most important instrument in communicating with others. So if you use it effectively, you will love the results. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. It's been absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for coming all the way from Minnesota to be with us here tonight.
My pleasure.
I've taken two sides of this paper in notes. I thought I knew about voice. I've always been interested in voice, but after tonight, there are so many things that I don't know. And Jim has given us so many tips and exercises that we can put to practical use. And that's what we really want from workshops. We want to have things that we can take away and that we can put into practical use when we're speaking. Because after all, I think all of us, if not most of us, are Toastmasters here, and we do speak a lot. Jim, I would love it if you came back sometime to give your next workshop. You said you have a few. We're always happy to have you here. I'm sure that we haven't heard even a fraction of what you can tell us. So
I'd love to. And if any of you want to contact me individually, I just threw some of my contact information into the chat. Feel free to send me an email or however you'd like to contact me, and I'd love to do whatever I can do to help. Maybe I could remind too that there will be a video of this.
Yes.
That has been captured. So if any of you want to come back and revisit some of what I covered here, or anyone who left early or someone who couldn't make it, it will still be available for viewing.
Sure. I've asked people to put their email addresses in the chat if they want it, but it will be on our YouTube channel.
Okay, that's the certificate that we will present. I will send you by email. Thank you very much, Jim, for this amazing workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Okay, terrific. Can you stop sharing? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay. If you want to know anything, any further information about Edinburgh Advanced Toastmasters, you can get in touch with me or Jacek or Adrian, or just go to Easy Speak and you will find our website there. But for now, I would like to thank everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. And also, of course, a massive thank you to Jim. Now, one last thing, I would like to ask you all to unmute and give Jim a great big round of applause. So let's all unmute.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.